Washington, the special counsel, Robert S. Mueller III, announced charges on Monday against 3 advisors to President Trump's campaign and laid out the most explicit evidence to date that his campaign was eager to coordinate with the Russian government to damage his rival, Hillary Clinton. The former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, surrendered to the FBI and pleaded not guilty to charges that he laundered millions of dollars through overseas shell companies, using the money to buy luxury cars, real estate, antique rugs and expensive clothes. Rick Gates, Mr. Manafort's longtime associate as well as a campaign advisor, was also charged and turned himself in. But information that could prove most politically damaging to Mr. Trump came an hour later, when Mr. Mueller announced that George Papadopoulos, a former foreign policy advisor to the Trump campaign, had pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI and was cooperating with investigators. In court documents released on Monday, federal investigators said they suspected that Russian intelligence services had used intermediaries to contact Mr. Papadopoulos to gain influence with the campaign, offering dirt on Mrs. Clinton in April 2016 in the form of thousands of emails. Mr. Papadopoulos secretly pleaded guilty weeks ago to lying to the FBI about those contacts and has been cooperating with Mr. Mueller's prosecutors for months. Monday's dramatic announcements capped months of speculation about which of Mr. Trump's campaign advisors might be first to be charged by Mr. Mueller, and they seem to be a sign that the special counsel's investigation is nowhere close to complete. There's a large-scale, ongoing investigation of which this case is a small part, Aaron S. J. Zielinski, a prosecutor on Mr. Mueller's team, said at Mr. Papadopoulos's plea hearing this month. The transcript of the hearing was released on Monday. It is now clear, from Mr. Papadopoulos's admission and emails related to a meeting at Trump Tower in June 2016, that the Russian government offered help to Mr. Trump's candidacy and campaign officials were willing to take it. The United States has concluded that President Vladimir V. Putin of Russia tried to tip the outcome of the 2016 election in favor of Mr. Trump. As part of that effort, Russian operatives hacked Democratic accounts and released a trove of embarrassing emails related to Mrs. Clinton's campaign. Mr. Mueller and his team are investigating whether anyone close to Mr. Trump participated in that effort. The announcements rippled across Washington, affecting both political parties. The powerful Democratic lobbyist Tony Podesta quit his lobbying firm Monday. The firm, the Podesta Group, was hired to do lobbying work on behalf of Ukraine, work that is at the heart of Mr. Manafort's indictment. The taxing money laundering case against Mr. Manafort describes a complicated scheme in which he lobbied for a pro-Russia party in Ukraine and its leader, Viktor Yanukovych, and hid proceeds in bank accounts in Cyprus, the Grenadines and elsewhere. Prosecutors say he laundered more than $18 million, and spent the money extravagantly. A home improvement company in the Hamptons was paid nearly $5.5 million, according to the indictment. More than $1.3 million more went to clothing stores in New York and Beverly Hills, California. Mr. Manafort bought a $3 million brownstone in Carroll Gardens in Brooklyn and a $2.8 million condominium in Soho, prosecutors said. Manafort used his hidden overseas wealth to enjoy a lavish lifestyle in the United States without paying taxes on that income, the indictment reads. He was also charged with failing to register as a foreign lobbyist. The charges carry the potential for roughly 20 years in prison, putting pressure on Mr. Manafort to provide information on others in exchange for leniency. Among other things, Mr. Manafort could shed light on how widely in the campaign it was known that Russia had damaging information on Mrs. Clinton. A senior White House lawyer, Ty Cobb, said last week that the president was confident that Mr. Manafort had no damaging information about him. In a court appearance on Monday, Mr. Manafort and Mr. Gates pleaded not guilty and were placed under house arrest on multi-million-dollar bonds. Mr. Papadopoulos is awaiting sentencing. Mr. Manafort's lawyer, Kevin Downing, called the money laundering charges ridiculous and noted that in the past half-century, prosecutors have charged only a handful of people with flouting foreign lobbying rules. Such violations are normally handled as an administrative matter. Mr. Manafort's Ukraine lobbying ended in 2014, 2 years before Mr. Manafort served in the Trump campaign, Mr. Downing said. Lawyers for Mr. Papadopoulos declined to comment. While the indictment paints an unflattering picture of the man Mr. Trump tapped to run his campaign, the allegations long predate his involvement in the presidential race. Mr. Trump seized on that fact.